You know when you don't exercise much and you stay up late and you're looking at your screen all the time and you don't reach out for social connection, you just start feeling really bad and your health is affected and you just don't flourish and thrive. Actually, let me say that again. When I don't eat well and get exercise and sleep, when I spend too much time on my screens and I don't nourish and look after myself, I really start to struggle. I really don't find that I can thrive under those circumstances. So I was saying the same thing both of those times, but one of those times I was saying you when I really meant me. And then the second time I owned it. The second time I used first person pronouns. I said I, when I don't go to bed early, when I don't look after myself. Sure, it might be a generalization that when humans don't look after themselves, they don't do very well. But what was it like for you to listen to those two different ways of describing it? One was me owning my experience. The other one was generalizing and basically telling you what you should do to feel good. So I am a passionate advocate of using I language. I see this as a very important and powerful tool to see myself more clearly. When I listen to other people who speak from their perspective, I see them more clearly. I get to lean into what they're saying. They're not telling me what's going on for me, they're sharing what's going on for them. Without saying you and we, when we don't get along with our parents, our lives can be affected by that. What about when I don't get along with my parents and my life is affected by that? I'm effectively saying the same thing, but in two different ways that have a very different impact. Why bother with I language, as well as seeing myself and others more clearly, allowing people to lean into what I'm saying? It's actually a more effective way of sharing my ideas. If I do want to have an influence and an impact on people and I own what I'm saying, other people don't get pushed away by my inclusive, generalizing language. So there can be a lot more connection when I language is used. I have found a lot more connection. Of course, there are times when it's an actual you or we. Like you are watching this video. I'm not going to say I am watching this video when you are watching this video. You are watching this video. We could be the people that live in this house. We live here. And I can say I live here, but there is an actual we. The time when it's a problem is when I actually do mean me, but I'm saying you or we. So what are the barriers to this? It's very vulnerable. If I'm sharing deeply and something that is tricky for me, it can be very, very challenging to really own it. If I'm feeling ashamed of the time I go to bed or the amount of screen time I have, then I might want to change it into a you or a we. It avoids the vulnerability. It can just be a habit. I notice that there's a correlation with age and the capacity to speak from the I. And what I find is the older people are, the more challenging it is. And so it makes me think that there's a habit and a cultural aspect to this barrier of owning it. People are worried about being seen as egocentric. It's not all about me. Well, sure, it doesn't have to be all about you. But when you are meaning you, then say I. It's not about actually taking away from being egocentric. And some people also want to be inclusive of the people around them, the people they're sharing with. And so they'll say you and we to try and include. And so it's understandable that there are barriers to using I language. Sometimes it's indoctrinated in certain cultures and religions to never speak about I. It's ours, it's we, it's a collective culture. Yes, we have a problematic individualistic culture. However, we also have a problematic lack of ownership of a lot of things that we could take ownership, that I could take ownership for, that we could take ownership for, is not as powerful as I am going to take ownership for the things that are actually within my control. That's a good example of it. So what are we going to do? How do we improve? How do I improve in using I language? How could you improve in using I language? First of all, set the intention. That's the first and foremost part. Do you want to own what you're saying? Do you want to verbalize and own that you have certain things going on? Or would you like to continue to say you and we? Either way, I accept you as a human being. If you do have an intention that you want to own your stuff, then get an accountability buddy. Get someone or a group of people that are willing to listen to you and let you know, maybe with a gesture. In men's groups, we might point to our chest. If I hear a man sharing and he is saying you and we, when I can tell that he means that he's talking about himself, I'll invite him, sometimes pointing here, to really own that and to use I language. And at first it's jarring. It spoils the flow of the share, and it can be very frustrating. That's why the first part is intention. Does this man want to change his language use to more ownership? And then is he willing to be held accountable to that by others around him or her? Like, it can be anyone. And then are you willing to be reminded? Having that agreement means that, and I might say after I really noticed that you moved into a you and a we space, maybe when it got a little bit more vulnerable for you, what you were sharing. And then the final step in the how to do it is to practice. As you've seen, watching this video, I have slipped into we language, shared language, when I've actually meant me a couple of times. All I can do better is catch it. And the progress goes continuously saying you and we, and then realizing after the effect, I realize that I was saying you and we, to saying it and then immediately realizing, to then starting to get ahead of it, starting to go, I'm about to change to we and you, and then nipping it in the bud, and then owning it. And the outcomes are beautiful. The amount of ownership of my stuff that I now have is intense. The ability to learn from and lean into what another human is saying when they own their stuff is of paramount importance in my life. It's become very, very important. I do try and interpret what people are saying. I translate it. When they're saying you and we, and I know they mean themselves, I interpret it, but I feel sad because they're not necessarily getting the benefits from their sharing. And the final advantage, the wondrousness of ownership, is just that self-awareness, self-connection. As self-awareness rises, so too does self-compassion need to also arise and be fostered and cultivated. Self-awareness is way easier than self-compassion to arise. I'm going to make another video on that. That's a great topic. So using I language, owning what is being said, that is the kind of world I wish to live in.